where is the control in the industry and where is the control in the Olympic movement. I think the brand representatives here today would probably say it's not a clear-cut thing where the control in the industry is. Kevin mentioned Yu Yen. Yu Yen, correct me if I'm wrong, is probably bigger than some of the brands here in terms of its turnover. The compliance efforts, I would say, sort of result in a sort of cat and mouse game. 1 minute the brand might think it's got control in the compliance effort, and the vendor compliance officers go in and depart, and then it sort of reverts back to how it was before. Now, when we look at the Olympic movement, I find it sort of like unbelievable that the International Olympics Committee still has no control over what's going on in terms of compliance efforts in the different host cities that we have at the moment, and where we've got a complete variation in infrastructure set up in terms of ethical purchasing. Nationally, what of course trade unions have tried to do in a strategic sense, so that the maximum number of people can benefit from the changes that you're trying to bring about. Now, we had 2 meetings, high-level meetings, if you want to call them that, at the ILO, which I think it's fair to say those people here who were there would probably say they didn't yield much. They were talking shops, we didn't get anywhere with that. And partly it's to do with the fact that one of the convening bodies, the World Federation of Sporting Goods Industry, is in fact a trade association for the industry. It has a code of conduct, but it does not have a compliance function in the organisation. So there's nobody there, if you like, to drive an agenda. The one body that is there that could do something, which has a number of corporate members, is the Fair Labour Association. But for those of you who are unaware of this organisation, it is not as progressive, we would argue, on the issues of living wage and hours of work, and therefore a number of organisations felt that they couldn't work with the FLA to go down this road. So one of the big problems with trade union rights, or an observation one can make about trade union rights, is in a sense it's about discrimination. And if you think about some of the efforts we've made nationally around discrimination in other areas, to do with, say, race and sex, we have gone down the path of what I think you would say in North America is affirmative action, what we would say in Europe is positive action, which is a recognition of historical disadvantage. Now let me try and operationalise this in terms of an actual proposal. I was at a meeting in Thailand, and a worker said to me, you know, all we really need is something to waive at an employer, almost like an insurance policy. And a right to unionise guarantee would be a very, very simple statement that a supplier would underwrite, possibly also a brand could underwrite, but in a sense that's already there in terms of the code of conduct, which says, in the event of any worker trying to organise or join a union in this factory, I, as owner of the factory, hereby undertake not to victimise or discriminate that worker. Signed by the factory manager. You need to understand the particular makeup, particularly of many of the sportswear factories in China. We're looking at an age group between maybe 18, 25, rural migrant workers, very transient, high levels of turnover. They need to understand what rights they have in that short time that they might be there. And we're also thinking in terms of incentives for suppliers, particularly those who engage in collective bargaining. And what we mean by an incentive would be a sort of a promise to maintain production for a significant length of time. Living wage, we know this is a contentious area. I think the first thing to say is that a discussion on a living wage is a national activity. It can't be there can't be some sort of global norm that's centrally dictated by somebody based on some sort of formula. on its birthday. And so we're in the ITG. We've embarked on a national exercise, and we'll have to drive that a bit. And we will be doing that before the Hong Kong event. To get our affiliates to engage with other stakeholders in trying to determine what is a living wage figure for their country. In some cases it's already happening. In Bangladesh, some estimates put a living wage figure at 4,800 taka. The current wage is 1,600. The notional living wage that's being used at the moment or being talked about is 3,000. In Cambodia in 2006, the trade union figure of a living wage was about $82. The final settlement moved from 45 to 50. So there's still some way to go.